That one.
Okay, we'll reconvene. We've taken our 5-minute break. Our authors here, Ms. Gonzalez, ACA 7.
Thank you, Dr. Weber, and committee members. ACA 7 would simply lower the voting age in local educational board elections to the age of 16. We're currently facing problems of low voter turnout and a lack of real representation for many local decisions, particularly for youth and people of color. For instance, as we shift the responsibility of monetary decisions in education to the local level, I saw in my own district that many parents who we assume will vote and be involved in local planning were not able to be represented at the decision-making table, sometimes because they're not able to actually register to vote. However, often their children could be. We also saw in our district and in fact this bill came along a number of years ago, in my mind, even before I was here, because we saw during a kind of crisis situation in education when pink slips were being delivered, there were decisions being made, and there were young folks who were very involved and tried time and time again to petition their school board about what they thought decisions should be thought about in this process. We saw massive walkouts in a lot of our high schools as a result of this, trying to get the attention of the school board to say we also have a stake in this. Now, I understand the idea of letting young people vote is a little jarring for some. I'm well aware. It's something I've been working on for a few years to try to get to a point where we have a bill. And so I'm comfortable with the decision. I'm also comfortable with because I happen to have a very engaged, now 20-year-old, then 16-year-old who, basically petitioned me on this during those walkouts. She bore the consequence of leading a walkout. It has a disciplinary mark on her record as a result, had to, go to suspension. And her idea was, but what else can I do to be heard? Nobody cares. They can go to the school board, they can testify, and we've all seen it. Some of you have sat on school boards, and it's nice, and it's sometimes patronizing, but they have no real decision-making power in their future, something that's affecting them every day. So not only do young people have, I think, the right to be able to start to engage in this conversation at earlier age than they do right now, but it's good for civic involvement in general. We know this. We know that the sooner you cast your first vote, the more likely you are to be a lifelong voter. That's a good thing for society. What's the difference between 16 and 18? Well, if you can't quite recall, a lot of 18-year-olds are in a transition kind of period in their life. They're moving. They've started a new school. Maybe, they're engaged in other activities. 16 is a very stable portion of their life where they're engaging in grown-up activities already. They're seeking to get a driver's license. They're starting to work. They have these opportunities to engage in society as a full-fledged adult, and this would be another opportunity to do that. We think because of the stability of the age of 16 that they're more likely to actually register and cast that first ballot. They're also being affected every day by school board decisions. So we can make that connection that we're always trying to make with voters, why it matters to vote, what happens that you should and can have a say in. They're being affected by that every single day because they understand that the decisions of the school board or the community college board are affecting their lives, are going to affect their lives every single day. So it is a way to encourage civic engagement for a lifelong voter. And I'm sorry if I'm jumping around a little. I have neglected my talking points. I think at this point, I know you've heard a similar bill.
Busy today.
You've heard a similar bill in the past, yeah. And it's important to note this isn't, although a new idea, it is fairly new idea in California, in the United States. It's not a new idea in the world. So there are 8 countries that allow 16-year-olds to vote. There are additional countries that in certain conditions allow 16-year-olds to vote, for example, if they're working. It's not unheard of. And some of that is really based in science. We know that there are 2 different decision-making aspects of a child's, young adult's brain. And those that are, they're able to fulfill like hot decision-making versus cold decision-making. Cold decision-making is what we engage in when we vote. It's not impulse decision-making. It's being able to collect information, process that information, and come out with a rational result. We know from studies that 16-year-olds are as apt to be able to do that as an 18-year-old. And as a 22-year-old, quite frankly. Now, are some 16-year-olds not ready? Sure. Some 18-year-olds aren't ready. Some 24-year-olds shouldn't be voting and don't vote. That's usually what happens. Now, where a 16-year-old is not like an 18-year-old and their brain is not fully developed is in that hot decision-making period. So the snap decision-making. And in fact, it's kind of interesting because in this state, we allow them to drive a vehicle, which takes a lot of that impulse kind of decision-making into account at 16, when studies would suggest that maybe we should hold off on that. I'm not trying to do that because I don't want my kids to, who are here today, to oppose my bill suddenly. But what we're trying to do is say, for those 16-year-olds who are engaged, who want to, who understand and can understand the facility, that they have an opportunity to take that information, to register to vote, to take that information and to have a say in their future. That's what this bill would do. I do recognize it's a new idea. I do recognize people have a immediate gut reaction to it when they hear it. And that's been a challenge. But we want to start to have this conversation because we think that in the long run, this state could be at the forefront of the United States and say it's time that we get serious about voter engagement, about young voter engagement, because if we don't get them when they're young, it's harder to get them as they grow older. So I have with me some students who are going to speak in support and further clarify why we need this constitutional amendment.
How many are there? Two? Two students?
Adult ally.
Okay, fine. We have like 4 minutes as a rule, so you guys have to split it up the best way you can. Okay?
Good morning. My name is Javon Lofton. I'm 17 years old, and I will be attending Edison High School. I live in Stockton, California, and I am a youth organizer with Fathers and Families of San Joaquin. I am here today to encourage you to give young people the right to vote for members of school board at the age of 16. We as students in our school, we should have the right to vote because the decisions are impacting our school and our lives. Research shows young people 18 through 29 have low voter turnout, and it shows when 16 years old vote, they are likely to vote their whole life. One moment, please. If young people are able to vote for school board at 16, then we can also get a higher rate of voting overall. For example, where I live in Stockton, we have really low voting rates and less than 10% residents voted in the election last week. Through this amendment, you have the power to not only give young people the opportunity to use our voice in our vote, but also to contribute to increased voting rates throughout my country and the entire state of California. I am taking driver's ed for summer school at 16. I can take care of my siblings, myself, and get a job. I can drive a car and have life and death in my hands. It is important that we all have those responsibilities. I should be able to vote on the school board who directly affect my life. I strongly encourage you to vote yes on Constitutional Amendment 7. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Okay.
Hi, my name is Polina Florova, and I'm a youth leader from the Vote 16 campaign going on in San Francisco. I'm also a citizen of the United States and daughter of 2 foreign nationals. The Vote 16 campaign in San Francisco is actually going one step further than the proposed constitutional amendment. In San Francisco, youth leaders and that I and a he represent are actively working to pass a charter amendment to give 16 and 17-year-olds the vote not only in school elections, but in all municipal elections also. The entire Vote 16 SF campaign, I would also like to mention, is completely youth-run. We have youth from the ages of 14 to 18 making critical and important decisions and meeting with our local legislators. And we have gotten unanimous support of the San Francisco Unified School District Board of Education and also got our charter amendment past the Board of Supervisors, and it will be put to the public vote this upcoming November ballot. We came out today catching the 7 a.m. Amtrak from the city to express our support in favor of this amendment. 16 and 17-year-olds are some of the most politically engaged people because they have yet to be jaded by the realization that our democracy and democratic function doesn't always work the way we hope it would. I have heard more compelling arguments from the presidential candidates from the mouths of my high school peers who are 15 and 16 than I have from most adults. We do have the ability and the intelligence to make and be just as involved as you let us to be. So please help us influence change and accountability in our schools and communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, you have a minute.
Good morning, Dr. Weber and committee members. My name is Anthony Galassi. I'm the Director of Health Policy at the Greenlighting Institute. And we are in strong support of ACA 7 because we believe that expanding voting rights for 16 and 17-year-olds in school board and community college elections will create a more robust democratic process and develop our young leaders to be better public citizens. In spite of the recent decisions and the recent erosion of voting rights across the nation, ACA 7 seeks to reject this trend and reinforce California as a leader of fairness and inclusion. Even as other states limit voting rights for low-income communities and communities of color, our state has exhibited leadership in exploring new ways to expand civic engagement. And we believe that ACA 7 will empower a new wave of young and emerging leaders to have an ownership stake in their schools and communities. There is no set of rights or privileges that can supplant the right to vote, and denying our young people will perpetuate the same limited voter turnout that we've witnessed over the past few election cycles. Our young leaders once they're 18, ACA 7 will help them prepare so that they can exercise the skills more effectively and more long-term over the course of their lifetimes.
Could you sum up?
Sure. The one thing I will say is that each and every one of us have mentored and supported young people over the course of our careers. And for those who might say that 16 and 17-year-olds may not be apt to vote, I believe that the leaders here today, the young leaders and those who we've engaged with, contradict that. And I believe that we owe them the opportunity to be able to support and have leadership stake in their communities and schools. So I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Any other supporters in the audience who will come forward and give your name, your organization, and your position of support?
Good morning. Katie Valenzuela Garcia on behalf of Children's Defense Fund California and strong support.
Thank you.
Rose Miller with the California High School Democrats and strong support.
Rocio Gonzalez with the California Pan-Ethnic Health Network and strong support.
Rosa Akil with the Alliance for Boys and Men of Color and strong support.
Good morning, Louis Brown on behalf of Policy Link and the California Equity Leaders Network and strong support.
Calvin Williams with the Movement Strategy Center and strong support.
Anna He, 17 years young, strong support.
Okay. Any opposition? Okay, is there opposition? Want to come forward to the table? Make your presentation. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Weber and committee. I'm Brian DeBlanc with the California School Boards Association, here to urge you to vote no on this today. Our position is support unless amended. To allow 16 and 17-year-olds to vote for all state and local elections. We 100% support the students who are here and the author's desire for civic engagement of 16 and 17-year-olds, and believe that's something we're doing in our schools and something we support doing more. We strongly oppose the idea of setting up local elected school boards as a second-tier training wheels level of government and singling it out that a different electorate elects a local school board than elects a county office of education, than a county board of supervisors, a city council, or you guys. And I believe the same arguments about the decisions that impact their lives that can be made for a local school board can be made for any other level of government. And so we believe if they're mature enough to vote for our members, they should be mature enough to vote for you.
Thank you. Okay, any other opposition? Okay, any questions from the members? Yes, Mr. Harper.
Thank you very much. In terms of the question of civic engagement of young people, I think is very important and participated myself. But is there currently state law that prohibits those who are under 18 from volunteering for political campaigns?
Of course not. What we're talking about volunteering.
Is there anything that prohibits those who?
Would you like me to answer the question?
Well, the answer was no, right?
Oh, okay. I just want to. I want to establish the types of questions I'm getting. If there's explanations
is there
or not.
any law that prohibits somebody from being able to contribute to a campaign who's under 18?
Well, depending if it's their money or not, yes, but.
Can those who are under 18 write a letter to the editor, attend a political rally, or be a youth organizer?
Obviously, you're asking questions you know the answer to, and I'd be happy to say yes, of course. There are a number of ways that somebody under the 18 can participate in civic-minded things. What they can't do is have an actual decision in who represents them, making the decisions about things that affect their everyday life. Yes, anybody can. By the way, this goes beyond the fact that the super involved, as we'll have it, those who are willing to write a letter, even in adulthood, right? That's beyond those who can actually cast a ballot, those who have the time and opportunity to volunteer, to do these things. That's a different standard. What we're trying to do is allow young people the right, like all of us, to engage in the political process with one simple thing, to register to vote and to cast that vote in an election. So yes, obviously there are a lot of ways that somebody can be active.
This amendment should be passed, if it should qualify and be passed by the voters. Why would you seek to still restrict those who are under 18 from being able to vote in city council elections, water board elections, state legislative elections?
So I actually am supportive of having 16-year-olds vote in every election. In fact, I'd like them to vote in the presidential election. However, we can't make that change in the state of California. The reason it was limited just to school boards, because I was convinced by young people who helped engage me in this, that it would actually solve a problem we have right now. You turn 18 and you go to vote, cast your first ballot, you are stuck trying to understand for your first time at the election what a water board member does, why we're electing judges, what every single proposition on the ballot does. Many of us don't know this, right? And we're still casting these votes. Is it a training ground? Yes. The 16-year-olds know what a school board does. They know what a community college board does. They know how it affects their life. We're taking care of getting that initial question out to voters. Why am I voting? Why does it matter? And what am I voting on? That is a problem with 18-year-olds and beyond that we still need to get at, but we're hooking them in at a younger age and making that clear connection. If in the future we need to expand this to additional offices, I'm more than happy to do that. This is a starting point and a starting point of a discussion that I think we could pass and let voters make the decision whether or not this makes sense that young people who every day go to school, who are affected by the decisions of these two boards have, or these types of boards, have the ability to have a voice in the process.
So the qualifications for running for college board or for school board are to be an elector. And so making folks eligible to be able to vote for college board or school board, is it your intention to make it so that folks who are 16, 17, et cetera, are eligible to be able to run for and serve on a school board or a college board?
That's an interesting question, and one I hadn't been posed before. I don't know if there are additional qualifications that also require on the school board. I'd have to, it might actually, I don't know that piece of law. So I don't want to say that, I don't want to take your presumption totally as face value. However, I have no problem with a 16 or 17-year-old running for a school board office. They would still have to convince the majority of voters who are not 16 and 17 to vote for them. We have school board members now, and unfortunately we have a similar situation with these kind of token school board members who may have a voice but not a vote on the dais. And that is what we've continued to do to young people. Said, okay, we'll listen to you. We'll put you right here. We'll allow you to testify. We'll allow you to write a letter. We'll allow you to engage, volunteer, but you don't get to make the real decision. So yes, I do think 16 and 17-year-olds, if that would be the law, should be able to run for school board.
And the last question I have is related to the question of why 16. There was no evidence or no qualifications or no scientific basis that was forwarded in terms of the background material that I've reviewed on why not 15, why not 14, why not 13, why not 12. If indeed we're discriminating against people who are 16 and 17 under current law, why don't we shift this down to further? This is a constitutional amendment to change the Constitution of the state of California, not something that could simply be undone by the state legislature.
Right.
And so why, if indeed it's discrimination against people who are 16 and 17, why not 12, 11, or 10?
Well, actually, the science doesn't say that a 10, 11, or 12-year-old has the same capabilities to make these types of decisions as a 16-year-old. I believe the science sits on 15, which is kind of an interesting question because we know every individual, if you've ever talked to a 15-year-old or a 22-year-old, we have wide varieties of people being able to process this information. However, to your question, 16, number one, it's constitutional amendment because that's what's required. I've spent 2 years figuring out any way we could do this legislatively, and I've come to the conclusion legally that we probably can't. I don't want to I love that these efforts are going on, but in order to actually have this, I think we need a constitutional amendment. To 16, we have decided 16 is a year of maturity when it comes to driving a car, working, being able to petition the court to be independent. So 16 made sense as far as some other responsibilities that we give to 16-year-olds. So all ages are a little arbitrary, quite frankly. Why 21? Why do we have this? What's the difference between 18 and 21? You know, some 20-year-olds, some 22-year-olds, the brain develops differently, yes, on these things, but we have decided that ages, we've picked ages in certain sectors, and 16 is what we've picked on driving. The science actually supports 15-year-olds, but I'm not going there.
Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd actually like to echo the comments of my fellow assemblyman from Huntington Beach. I think he brings up some good points. If this was to come before me on a statewide ballot, I'd vote no. I think there's a reason we said 18 in statute. I think really the bigger question is not, is this, as mentioned by the expert from the school boards, is this a training wheels concept? Are we actually training people at, in one election to vote for all elections? I don't really think there's any justification for that. I mean, clearly people are either of an age of maturity to vote for all elections, as you had mentioned, or they're not. I don't think that there's any reason why a school board would be more or less important or more or less applicable, especially when they have siblings and parents and other relatives that would be able to vote on their behalf. But I think that's ground that's already been tread. So what I'd actually like to address is the politicization of the learning environment in high school. So, clearly we would understand that if 16 and 17-year-olds could vote in these elections for the people that are running, their boards of education, then there would most likely be campaign activity that would either be potentially not on campus during campus time, but definitely off campus or on, non-sanctioned events, et cetera. Normal political activity that we would see and we do see in everyday life. And I'm just not really convinced personally that that's the environment that we want to start subjecting our high school students to. So with that, that's my statement. But really, it's a question to you. I mean, that's how I feel, and I'm not sure that I'm going to change my mind on that.
Sure.
But I'm very curious to hear what you have to say about, what you think the real-world implications of politicizing high school would be.
Well, let's just be clear that we could carry that conversation on to college, right? I think it is a great opportunity. Nothing would excite me more than a school board candidate to have to come to a rally and address the students who will be directly affected by the decisions they make. Because so often, and I, even in my former role, and quite frankly, when my daughter walked out, she walked out against me because I was representing teachers, and the discussion was about pink slips versus taking back a guaranteed raise, and we were making adult decisions about adult things, and the kids cared about who was getting pink slipped. They had a very direct discussion about which teachers affected them the most. They wanted to be part of that discussion. And I think that's a valid discussion. And I think that when they're talking about if money is going to be spent on a football field or if it's going to be spent on textbooks in a classroom, if they're going to ensure that principals stay in one school or are transferred around based on these things, I think the kids who are actually in those schools are at the best point to have a say in those discussions. Will they have the total say? No. They're part of a bigger electorate. There is not, I can imagine no better reform measure for our educational system than to have young people be able to vote. Because the arguments we have, the ideological arguments, the arguments about adults, they're not going to have. They're going to have the argument about the quality of their education, the quality of their school, the decisions being made that are going to impact them and their futures, and that is a good thing. I think it's a very good thing. And I want to point out something else you said that just is a little bit off and probably shows the different constituencies we represent. When you said a child in a school has somebody else that can vote for them. There are a large number of children in my school district who really don't. They are children, and I think we had an example here, children of immigrants who are unable to vote. We've created a school funding system that says that parents parents will be able to decide. In fact, think about this. We give schools additional money for English learners, school districts, right? And we say, okay, well, the governor says, that's okay because it'll be handled at the local level. Now, if that local school board decides, I'm going to take that money and not put it into English learners, but divide it across the school board equally for teacher raises, they're able to do that. And our governor and our legislature would say, but that's okay because then the voters have a say, we have the LCAP, we have some other provisions. Well, when you don't have a parent, by nature, most of the parents of English learners are not citizens. That's kind of, an obvious approach. They can't even do more than voice. Okay, well, I would guess that that's going to be true. In my district, that's true. So sorry, Mr. Harper, if that offended you. So they don't even have somebody to voice their opinion on what is happening to that English learner money that we said should be handled at the local level. Now, that kid who is a citizen and is 16 years old could have a say. And I think that that's an important distinction. And one of the reasons why I ended up doing this bill after thinking about it for 2 years, because it actually affects some of the decisions being made on the local level where people don't have representation. Even if that kid is a voter, or a worker paying taxes, and I'm sorry I call them kids. I call my 20-year-old a kid. Paying taxes and doing everything else that they're supposed to do. They still don't have a say on the fact that they know additional money is coming to their school board because there is a preponderance of English learners and nobody is there to have a voice for them in the electoral process. I think that's wrong.
Any other questions? Mr. Mullen?